Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, last night we were having an exchange and my time ran out and I wanted to finish the comments. And so I'll start a little bit doing a real short walk through the bill itself. And so initially I was asking Representative Dio what the term excluded meant when they were listing all of the topics that were no longer going to be able to be discussed. And excluded meant, I think we resolved that excluded meant prohibited. So in Iowa Code today, there are 45 different references outside of Chapter 20 that reference Chapter 20. My next question that I had was, how would those conflicts be resolved? If we change Chapter 20, those 45 other references would have to be looked at. How would that be resolved? Well, on page 1, line 29, is the PERB Board. General powers of the PERB Board. Currently, you would go to the PERB Board to resolve, to reconcile the conflict. But we have taken away, on line 29, page 1 of the bill, the authority of PERB to interpret or apply. They no longer can be utilized for that purpose. They can only be utilized to administer. And as I read the rest of Code 20.6, it basically is only dealing with arbitration and mediation. And we gave them some additional responsibilities, but not interpretation and application. So I looked at the PERB Board a little bit further, and on their webpage, they state, Iowa has a system that is envied by many states that struggle to achieve the proper balance of protecting workers while maintaining effective management of government. In Iowa, it is an equal balance of power at the table between labor and management that has provided positive results that work for all Iowans. That is on their webpage. That is their job. But we've taken away 2/3 of their responsibilities. By the way, that quote was from Governor Robert D. Ray in regard to the Public Employment Relations Act of 1974. So we've taken that away. We've added some additional responsibilities to the PERB Board. So I then go to the fiscal note. What does that mean? Because I've heard the rhetoric about saving taxpayer money. And the very first line is the statement that says, sufficient information is not available to determine the total fiscal impact of House File 291. Unintended consequences. We are passing a bill that we have no idea what the price tag is or necessarily how we will pay for it, because they go on to say, after giving PERB the authority to establish fees, the fees go to the general fund and not to the appropriation to pay for the vendor that PERB is mandated to hire. And then they list several other unintended consequences that may occur as a result of the legislation. So back to, how do we reconcile the conflicts that are created with those 45 other code sections. And in looking through the bill, it is through the district court. Because no one any longer has the authority to interpret or apply Chapter 20. It would have to go to the district court. And as I recall what we did a few weeks ago, we cut them. And when I think about the courts facing the deappropriation, Representative Wessel Krischel mentioned it a little earlier, but we had judges at our forum, 5 judges come to our forum in Davenport in Scott County, and they said, if the cuts go through, we will now have a part-time court system because we cannot afford to keep the doors open 5 days a week in our district. Unintended consequences. Sending reconciliation of Chapter 20 to the courts to determine. We have a process that works, and all Iowans benefit from public employees. They benefit in our cities, in our counties, in our schools, in our hospitals, in our community. They are the ones that we have on speed dial when there's a crisis. They are our neighbors. I support the Hunter Amendment because it is absolutely the right thing to do, to keep that balance, rather than having a fruit basket upset around our public employees. I know that when we hurt these workers, economic security, which is exactly what we're talking about, which is exactly what they are fighting for, we hurt the economic security of the state. And at this particular time, I do not see how we could be making decisions. We can't afford to make decisions that further erode our economic security of the state. When we passed the deappropriation bill, there was only $600,000 as a projected surplus for FY17. The fiscal note is projecting a deficit in the cost of what we have done with this one piece of legislation for FY18 and 19, and go on to say expenditures change from a variety of funds may result from the following bill provisions beginning with their effective dates. It is a situation that the unintended consequences far outweigh the goals that you have in mind. And the goals that the Republicans talk about only become rhetoric. They are not reality. Support the Hunter Amendment. Keep the balance that we have. Keep the economic security for our employees and our state. Iowans deserve better than this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.